Hi, welcome to another edition of Warehouse 34, and I am Diane Morton-Gattullo, and I am very, very excited to share my friend who is just brilliant. She is one of the coolest ladies in Staten Island that if you did not meet her, you should. And you should get to know her and all of the wonderful things that she does. Her name is Edwina Martin, and this is my friend.
Thank you so much, Diane. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm excited to be here and humbled to be here as well.
Thank you so much for joining. I find you to be fascinating. You are not only, you have a great background and you're so humble. You're like, I don't think I could hold a whole hour of everything, but you could take volumes of episodes because you're so interesting. Plus, everybody knows you as probably one of the nicest people. You're just genuinely one of the gems in the crown of Staten Island's jewels, you know?
Thank you.
You're so welcome. You have an interesting position. I want you to share and expand on it because I don't think a lot of people know a lot about the office that you are now in charge of. So tell everybody who you are and about your office.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to start with a little bit of a joke. I'm often introduced as the public advocate, and I laugh and I say, no, I don't want Jumaane Williams to think that I want his job. I love mine. I'm the public administrator, and it's usually a really great in for me to start explaining what I do. So we are a city agency, and why were we created? Well, in every county or borough of New York State, there is either a surrogate court or a probate court, which is where people go to get administration over estates from a will, from a trust, et cetera, et cetera. When there is no will or pre or advanced planning document sort of laying out how someone wants their things to be administered after they pass, and there's no family member who would directly inherit under New York state law that could come forward and be appointed as an administrator of the estate, the Office of the Public Administrator steps in to fill that void. And what we do is administer the estate. That includes looking for any assets, bank accounts, investments, real property, movable property, and we pull them all together and get a sense of what the breadth of the estate is. And we also do research. We have access to a number of databases, and we do research to try to find family members if none come forward and there are no friends that could give us a family tree or something like that. And so we do sort of everything that's necessary from soup to nuts. If you can think of us as a property manager, for example, because while we are administering the estate and before we finalize that estate, we have to take care of the property that's associated with it. From snow removal to getting the grass cut to getting mold removed and things like that. We also do a number of public service projects. For example, I reach out to our local elected officials to just remind them from time to time that if there is some property that is sitting in their districts that's not being attended to and is possibly becoming a magnet for crime or vermin or other things, to let us know and we can research to see if there's family. Now, 60% of the time, it is owned. There's a family member in another state and they're not taking care of it properly, but there's nothing for us to do or step in. But every once in a while, we discover that actually the owner passed away, there is no family, there's no mortgage, so there's no bank that's taking control of it, and we can step in to start to take care of that property, make it less of a nuisance in the community while we sort of figure out how to handle it. And if there is, a cousin or any other kind of family that stands to inherit in some way. So we, it's another public service that we provide.
Does this happen a lot? Do you have more, I don't know how to phrase this properly. The percentage, do you think is higher that people don't have wills and haven't really thought about the end game and how everything will be, dispersed or taken care of?
Yeah,
Or do
so-
more people have wills and are taken care of?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a generational thing. For people over 70, more often than not, they have a will or something that lays out how things should be taken care of. As you go sort of down in age, you'll see that correspondingly the number of people that have done pre-planning decreases exponentially. So that when you get to people in the 25 to 40 year age range, maybe 30% of them
Wow.
have done pre-planning, which if you have children is terrible. Because, God forbid the terrible thing happens, there's no plan laid out for how they want their children to be taken care of.
wow.
And as a friend of mine always says, when you don't have a plan, the state has a plan, and the state steps in, and you might not like what the state plan is, because our job, we're not the attorneys for family members or distant family members. Our job is to marshal the assets, prevent waste, look for potential heirs, and liquidate that property. So no, you could, when we put the property up for sale, you can bid, put a bid in like everyone else, but you don't have a preference of some sort.
Do you find that people who are contacted who had no idea that they were the last living heir are shocked that they're now inheriting something, probably in Staten Island at that point, where they're looking at you going, really? I had no idea.
Yeah, the reality is for most of our estates, once we've sort of cleaned it up, there isn't much left to inherit. So, really, we're talking about, less than 20%, maybe 15%
Wow.
of the estates that we come to administer anyway. And usually there is no family. So really, we make sure that the landlord gets their apartment back. We do a
Right.
look through. We look for important documents. We send out letters and other things. And we make sure that the person is buried. But usually there's not a lot of money left for people to inherit from the estates that we administer.
Wow. I know that in the past, when I've been to different events with you and things, and when they announce your title, people go, what is that? They have no idea. And it's really an important position. I mean, the office is integral to, just creating and finishing off somebody's life plan. If they didn't do it themselves, you guys are there to step in to do it for them and to make sure everything is finished properly. I can't imagine that somebody today would not want to have a will and leave themselves open to this, but it's sad to hear that they are in that position,
Well, no one likes to think about the end, right? We all think we're going to live forever. And so it's an unpleasant and unhappy thing to think about, and people put it off till tomorrow. As we know, tomorrow is not promised, and so sometimes it's never taken care of.
Right.
These are city agencies, but we are the smallest agencies in New York City. My office, the Office of the Richmond County Public Administrator, is actually the smallest agency in New York City. We are 5 people. We do not have a back office. We do not have a this and a
Right.
that. And each of us, does the job of 2 to 3 people because, like most city agencies, we're under-resourced.
You know what, though? When I go
but-
to other boroughs, I don't think I've ever met anybody who
well, I
would hold your
actually-
position.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
very involved in the
Yeah,
community.
so I actually was going to say something else about that. Public administrators' offices are created under the New York State Surrogates Court Act. We are quirky city agencies because the commissioners are appointed by the surrogate judges, not by the mayor. So I'm a New York City commissioner, but I'm a non-mayoral city commissioner.
Interesting.
And so I'm very grateful to Judge Matthew Titone, who selected me to be the new public administrator for Richmond County after he was elected surrogate court judge. When he was elected, I really thought about this position a lot, which I'm still learning. You know, I had sort of some vague knowledge of what it was and what it did. And, but I put together a cover letter and I sent him my resume and I interviewed. And one of the things that I was told by the interviewing committee was that the judge wanted people to know what the public administrator was and what it did. And he wanted community outreach for that position so that people understood that we could be a resource. We can be a resource to elected officials. We can be a resource for people when a loved one passes away in the home, and which necessitates an investigation by the police, even if there's nothing untoward, and they can't get in to get clothes for them to be buried in, to get,
wow.
you know, I mean, after 9/11, there were family members who needed to access apartments. I was not public administrator then, but I heard stories about this. People who needed to get into the apartments of their children, their uncles, their aunts, you know, their loved ones, to get combs, brushes that had their hair, something for the DNA,
Yes.
so that they could be identified. And, you know, sometimes they had trouble doing that. A public administrator can help facilitate that sort of thing while an investigation is going on and while there's a period of transition. So there are things we can help with in addition to stepping in when there's no one there for a decedent.
That's amazing. And it's amazing that, you know, so many people don't know about it. But I also have to go back to the fact that I've never met anybody else who, I mean, the person who had the position before you, yes, I met him. Maybe it's part of Staten Island being, you know, just kind of where it's the environment where everybody is friendly and comes out. But you are really much more in the public eye than most. And I applaud you for it.
Well, thank you.
People should
Thank
know
you.
that your office
Thank you.
exists and what your office is there for and different ways that you can help. It's kind of sad. I mean, I really didn't know everything about your office to begin with, but I'm finding out like, oh my goodness, 9/11, I remember the loved ones on television talking about having to get their property for DNA testing and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't thought about that in years, but just having someone help them further the, you know, expedite that whole waiting time is an amazing sense of peace, I think. You know?
Yeah. I can't speak to what other boroughs or counties do because, you know, I think each borough is quirky and they have their things that they focus on and they have their relationship with their surrogate, right?
Listen, I'm from Brooklyn. I always think everything that goes on in Brooklyn is perfect. I can find no fault with anything in Brooklyn. Born and raised there. It still has my heart, even though I live in Staten Island and I love it here. And I'm very grateful for the wonderful life that we have here. But I'm still from Brooklyn, so everything is perfect. So I'm sure their public administrator is excellent, although I don't know who it is, but excellent. But your office also, I heard when you were honored with WOW, Women of the World, that your office has another program out there that it just really touched my heart. I mean, it's you don't think about it, but when you hear it, you go, "Oh my God! How could it be that, you know, I never heard of this before?" Please tell everybody about your dignity program.
Absolutely. I did want to respond to another thing that you said.
Oh, what? The Brooklyn's the best?
Before we.
Okay. I'm joking. I'm joking. Everybody knows I'm joking.
Well, you know what? I'm not going to opine on any other
No,
borough.
that's okay.
You know,
That's
each one is wonderful in its own special way, right?
And I love Matt Titone. He is a dear friend, and I know he's going to watch this. Or Judge Titone. I'm sorry, Matt. But I just had to throw that out there just in case. But everybody who watches the show knows that that's the way I am.
So it's to the extent that I'm out there, it's not just that in my interview, I was told that they were looking for someone who would do community outreach. But also, community outreach and helping people is very much a part of my being. So
I met you before this position.
Yes, I would be out there sort of regardless. But now I have a mission, and I bring my brochures everywhere. But I'm, in addition to being involved with a number of different organizations, community-based organizations, I'm also the first woman and the first person of color in this position in Richmond County. And so I'm also sort of out in the public eye a lot so that people can see that. So that, if there are students, if there are people in law school, students in college, in high school, in elementary school, who are wondering, what are the opportunities for me? What can I aspire to? That they have the examples out there that they can see, hear, sort of touch. That tell them that the world is limitless for them. And as you and I were talking before the show started, you have to ask. If you don't ask, then there never will be an answer, right? And so the answer, oftentimes can be no, but sometimes it can be yes. There are many jobs I've applied for, that where the answer has been no, right? But I decided to throw my hat in, knowing that, I didn't know what was going to happen. But I was really interested. I was interested in really opening up the public service aspect and possibility of the office. And so I threw my hat in, and there was that rare yes.
Well, I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All of the years that I've known you, you've always been in the public eye, and you've always been such a positive role model. So I work in the public school system, and I feel deeply in my soul that every child who walks into our building every day should be exposed to someone that looks like them, and should think when they look at them, I can be them. And you're such a positive role model that when a child encounters you, whether or not it's at an event or, there are just so many events I see you at, a day event, an evening event, a teenager or a college kid, they can look at you and say, I can be you. I can be you, and someday when you want to retire, I can take your job. And I think that it's important for them to know and see that there are endless opportunities for them, and the only thing that can hold them back would be the fact that they don't ask and they don't try, and they don't seek the knowledge, or they're not exposed to somebody who can show them that they can be all they can be.
And that you have to get used to rejection or perceived failure as well. That sometimes there will be the no. What do you learn from that experience? Maybe it just wasn't the right fit. Or maybe it just wasn't the right time.
I never take a no for failure. I take it as in, if it doesn't work out, that's great. And it's whether it's been professionally or romantically in my life. Like my husband and I are very dear friends with all of our exes. I'm very close to a lot of people that I used to work with in different, capacities. And I'm sort of like a soul keeper. Once you come kind of into my life, I keep you in my soul, and I just kind of take you on the adventure that I'm on.
I love that. I'm going to borrow it from you, because I like
right
that,
ahead.
Soul keeper. It's so true.
Yeah, but if someone tells me no, or I don't get whatever it is that I, may have wanted at that moment, that's fine. Because without, perceived failure, you really don't understand what success is. And you can't enjoy it.
And you don't necessarily appreciate what it represents. So now we'll transition to talking about our burial program. Because,
oh my goodness.
I'm so proud of this program. It has been in existence in Richmond County for 5 decades. And it was started by one of my long ago predecessors, John Carney, who's actually the uncle of Assemblymember Michael Cusick.
Yes, and he was very
Yes.
close friends with my father-in-law, Vinnie Gattullo.
Wonderful,
Yes, yeah.
wonderful. 1 degree of separation.
That's right. That's right.
On Staten Island anyway. So anyway, he started this program because he didn't want decedents who were in the administration of the public administrator to be sent to Hart Island. Hart Island is New York City's Pauper's Field. It actually has been in use almost continuously, if not continuously, since shortly after the Civil War. It's running out of space. There are so many things that one could say about Hart Island. It was under the administration of our Department of Corrections. That changed fairly recently, and it's now under the administration of the Parks Department. But that doesn't change a lot of realities about what Hart Island represents. And so he wanted something very different for Richmond County. And I've been very, very proud to continue that very proud tradition. Diane, we are the only borough in New York City and probably the only county in New York State that has this program where we guarantee that for decedents that are under our administration, they are buried with dignity and compassion on Staten Island, regardless of means. So
That's incredible.
So there are decedents that we bury who had pre-played plans, and we really just make sure that the plan, is followed through on, and make sure that, any details the funeral home needs and the cemetery needs, they receive. We have decedents who don't have a lot of money, but they have enough for us to bury them decently. But then we have the decedents,
Sure.
For whom they're nothing. Or maybe there's $500 in a bank account, and that's it. And we make sure that they are buried as well on Staten Island, regardless of means.
That's beautiful. That really is beautiful.
It's also a challenge because we cannot use any of our city budget for this. The position of the city is that, if you have a decedent that doesn't have means, we have a plan in place. Remember earlier I said,
Right.
if you don't have a plan,
That's right.
the state and the city have a plan for you that they'll put in place. So part of this plan that they have in place is that you go to Hart Island. And, if some family member ever pops up, or if there are friends that want to visit you, they can go to Hart Island, once a month or twice a month, whenever that ferry goes over, if you can make, the reservations in far enough time. And when you get there, you may or may not be able to even get close to where they are in the trenches that they build there, that were being done by people in the sort of corrections facilities. And I actually don't know who's doing that now, that it's under the auspices of the Parks Department. But anyway, that's the city's plan. And we do something different here on Staten Island. So we have to raise funds to get that done.
So how does somebody go about finding out more information about it and also donating to help support this cause?
Well, one of my predecessors worked with the World of Women that you referenced earlier, from whom I'm very grateful to have been honored fairly recently. He worked with the World of Women to create a Friends of not-for-profit for the Office of the Richmond County Public Administrator, and it's called the Foundation for Dignity. And their email address is thefoundationfordignity.org. And you can make donations towards our burial program to the Foundation for Dignity. I'm actually, as you know, working with them for the first in-person fundraiser ever done for this office. That's going to be at the Old Bermuda Inn tomorrow night.
I know, I'm going. I'm going.
And I'm so grateful for that.
Oh my gosh, please. I think a lot of this we take for granted. We take for granted that when we pass on, our house and our belongings and our children and everything else, our families will all be taken care of and everything is just, hunky-dory, sort of like a movie or television. And also that, whatever walk of life you have or financial, background, you're going to be buried nicely. Nobody really thinks that they're ever going to wind up at Hart Island. So the thought that, you are taking John Carney's program, continuing it in such a great way, and then adding in an event where people get to meet you. And I've always said to you that whenever I'm around you, that your smile is infectious. You cannot be in a bad mood around you. Anybody who's around you all of a sudden just feels the genuine compassion that you have for everyone and your happiness. You're a very, very happy person. And you share that and brighten up the room. So
You're making me want to cry, by the way.
No.
I'm going to seem very unhappy to the people watching this.
who may not be able to feel this through the show, you need to become more involved in the community, and you need to go out and see all of the people in Staten Island who do amazing things, in particular, Edwina Martin. And then you'll see the fact that her smile, her laugh, her whole demeanor is just really infectious. You can't be in a bad mood with her.
Thank you.
You're welcome, but I think it's important that you've moved this program and not only continued, but moved it to the next level of doing these events where people may be kind of shy to go and ask or can call and say, what's it about? But they may not be when they want to go buy a ticket and just go sit there and hear and experience it. And now somebody can go to an event and experience it and say, wow, I'd like to, donate some money. I would like to volunteer. I'd like to fundraise. I'd like to do something.
And there are many opportunities to help, but one of the main ways is to reach out to the Foundation for Dignity because they organize groups of people to come to our burials.
I was waiting for you to mention that because that's what kind of struck a chord for me.
Yeah.
No one should ever die alone.
We always have, 5 to 12 people at every burial that we do. And usually we have very short notice because it's, we're working with a number of moving parts. So there's the funeral home and their availability. It's getting the decedents to the funeral home from the morgue. It's the working with the cemeteries. And remember, we have to work within their goodwill because, this is not sort of a family planning a funeral and a burial. We usually have multiple decedents that we bury at a time, partly for cost efficiency, but partly because the funeral homes that are working with us, they don't even get covered for costs. What we pay them is in some ways criminal.
Some people think funeral homes, like, oh my God, when they really know what it's like.
They're so generous.
Yeah.
The funeral homes on Staten Island,
they
Richmond
are
County,
remarkable.
They are incredible.
And they don't make the money that everybody thinks they make.
They are community.
It's hard. It's expensive.
They're community stalwarts. They are there for the community. They were there for people during COVID when we had such high rates of people passing, such high numbers, and the medical examiner's office was overwhelmed, and so many things were going on. And remember, family members, there was a point in time, remember, when people couldn't travel.
Yes.
And family members who wanted to get to the apartment, to look for the insurance, to look to see if there's a will, to throw away the rotting food there. They could not travel here. They couldn't get here. So we were actually very much on the front lines through the height of COVID. After a month, we reopened the office. We never closed, but we started going back in person in a staggered way so that if one person got sick, all 5 of us didn't have to stay home. And it turned out that at various times, different staff members, unfortunately, were exposed or did have COVID. And so I'm really glad that I had it staggered because with 5 people, you can't afford for all of us to be benched, so to speak.
Absolutely. I don't want our time to fly by without finding out who you are and how did you get here? Like, how did Winnie become the winner in our hearts? Like, how did you become this a remarkable woman?
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I think that so much of who we are is formed by my parents. So I'm going to say it starts with them. And they raised us. They were children of the 60s, and they had a lot of opportunities opened up for them that their parents didn't have.
Right.
And they wanted the same for us, but they also wanted us to pay it forward. So we were very religious and very family oriented and very close knit, and that really I like to think helped give me a very solid grounding to work from.
Were you raised in Staten Island?
No, I was raised in Maryland, in Prince George's County.
Oh, wow. I love Maryland.
I went to college in Massachusetts. I went to the same school that my older sister did. My older sister is 4 years older than me. So when Cheryl graduated from college, I graduated from high school. And I remember, I couldn't have a high school graduation party or anything because Cheryl was graduating in Massachusetts the next day. So literally, we had my graduation ceremony and we hopped into the van, I remember, and we had one of those like Scooby-Doo vans at the time. And drove to Massachusetts, the 8 hours or whatever it was from Maryland, and got there in the middle of the night. And the next day was my sister's graduation. And so, it should have been a joint party, but I remember it just being a party for my sister that night.
But maybe that's what gave you the foundation of being gracious under all situations.
Maybe.
Finding the best.
Maybe.
Okay, I didn't get to have a party, but we're going to celebrate my sister's
Yes.
big accomplishment.
So we both went to Williams College. I was an art history major.
Wow.
And I remember one night having a dream that I went to law school and telling my friends at breakfast the next morning, and we all laughed because that is the last thing at that time I would have thought I would be doing. But as time went on, after I graduated from college, I worked in the federal government for a little while. And I realized that, like my father, like a number of family members, I was more and more drawn to public service. And so I started to think about what's the best way for me to go along that path. And I decided that law school was the best fit for me because it gave you the opportunity to go and shape policy and legislation and laws. And I saw, at that time anyway, I saw that as the most effective way to have a large impact on a number of people and help move society forward, to a kinder society, but most importantly, towards equity, right? And equal and fair access for all people to the amazing resources that we have in this country that are available and plentiful for everyone. So I did end up going to law school, but I was very focused because I wanted to go to a school that was known for public service. And so that drew me to NYU, whose motto was a private institution in the public service. And I won a couple of scholarships to help defray the huge law school costs. So NYU is actually what brought me to New York. And I lived in the dorms while I was in school. And then I had different apartments in Manhattan afterwards. And then I met someone from Staten Island.
And I'm so glad you did.
And, I started visiting the island, and we decided we wanted to buy a house. And really, the most economical place at that time was Staten Island.
I think it
where
still is,
you
though.
could get sort of space and a yard and things like that, not pay an arm and a leg, and have a nice standard of living. And so I came to Staten Island. At that time, I had been working at different law firms. I started off at a big firm, which is not unusual for students from NYU Law School. I clerked for a federal judge. Then I went to a big firm. Then I went to a medium-sized firm. And then I went to a small firm, which I really loved a lot.
So smaller firms, more your...
That was just more me. It was more intimate. I could have more, be more hands-on in a way that I wasn't in the larger firms. And as much as I liked that firm, it wasn't public service. And I still felt like there was this hole in me and that I wasn't going in the direction that was meant for me. And so I started applying for jobs, for city government jobs, for not-for-profit jobs. And I remember one morning sitting on my laptop, drinking a cup of tea, and I had and back in those days, it was the dial-up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was on the messenger thing, whatever it was back in those days, which I never ever did. And a friend sends me a message, "Hey Winnie, how's it going?" Winnie, as you know.
Yes.
For your viewers, that's my nickname.
Yeah.
And I wrote back and said, "Well, actually, I have a couple of offers from these government agencies, and I'm sort of sitting here pondering, the direction I want to go in next." And I didn't hear anything from her. And this is one of my best friends in the world, Haley. I'm not supposed to do that. Haley Gorenberg, that I went to law school with. I didn't hear back from her for a few minutes, and I just thought, she went on her way. And she wrote back and said, "If you're looking for a job, we have an opening at the agency that I'm at, and I think you'd be a perfect fit." And so that led me to go to legal services, where I was for 10 years.
Wow.
And I was the director of communications, government relations, and pro bono services.
So you're underachiever, right? You just like to stay under the radar. Oh my goodness.
At the same time that I got that job, I moved to Staten Island, and I looked at where our offices were, which were in every borough except for New York City. Except for Richmond County. Mm-hmm. They're in every borough in New York City except Richmond County. And I was like, well, wow, I don't think I like that scenario. Mike McMahon was just elected to the city council at that time.
I remember.
I sent him a letter that I sent to all the new city council members, inviting them to a breakfast to learn about our agency, blah, 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 lots of nice things, congratulations. And he called the office and he said, "How dare you send me a letter talking about citywide services when you don't even have an office in Staten Island?" So I scheduled a meeting with him. And I went and I met with him. And, that's where we started the discussion of opening a Staten Island Legal Services office. I made a presentation to the board about changing demographics.
Sure.
And the executive director and the board at the time felt that, this is the right time to make that move. And so I set up an outreach project to work on creating that office. And I met with every judge, every elected official, and every nonprofit on Staten Island. And on Staten Island, you can do that. There are some boroughs where, I'd probably still be scheduling those meetings now, but in Staten Island, that's manageable. And the first person that I met with, who was a community advocate at that time, was Debbie Rose. And we hit it off, and we stayed in touch, and we became friends. And after she was elected to the city council, I told her I would love to come and work with you. Well, I don't have any openings right now, because I sort of, set up my office fairly immediately after I was elected. And, you're happy where you are now. Why would you want to come, make that change? And I said, because I want to make legislation. I want to be sort of on the side where we're actually getting the legislation through. And so at a certain point in time, that opening came up, and I went and I worked with her for close to 8 years.
I remember that as well. Wow. So again, you're not shy. It must have been hard, though, to leave the office that you really created here.
But I did not work in that office. I was in the central office. I was never in the Staten Island Legal Services Office. I just worked on creating it.
After you created it, you didn't.
No, no. You see a lot of searches where people create a search committee and then they decide, I'm going to take that job. I don't think that's not my way of running a search committee. And what we were looking for was someone who had a lot of family law experience, because after doing a needs assessment, we decided that's where the biggest hole was in Staten Island. So we were opening with a very small office of 4 people. The executive director was going to have to be in court as much as the other staff members there.
Right.
And they were going to have substantial experience in family law, as well as program building, community outreach, and really expert fundraising. And I'm talking about doing proposals for $1 million, projects, not small things. Not that that's not important, but we really needed someone that had, that whole package, and that was not me. So we hired someone who had that experience, and she helped to build that office from 4 people to, I don't know how big it is now. I'm going to say it's at least 30, if not more.
That's
people.
amazing.
Yeah. Helping thousands of people in Richmond County in their basic civil legal needs.
That's amazing. But had you not written that letter to Mike, who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
I mean,
it might
I would
not
think
ever
that
have
it
happened.
would have happened, but not in the same time frame, or with the same passion.
Or in the same way.
Right.
But it really helped having a sitting council member support this program building. And it's something that a lot of people dream of that never happens. And so, I think it was meant to be.
Right. Are your parents still alive?
My father passed, but my mother is still
I'm
with
sorry
us.
about your dad.
Thank you.
Your mom must just be like, we did good. Look at her. I mean, because you're very educated and you're very accomplished, and you've never rested. Kind of. I mean, each step has been enough to say, I'm good. I can stay here forever. This is a great experience. I'm doing, meaningful work, and it's great. But you just never rested, and you just kind of went for another achievement. Or if the opportunity wasn't there, you created the opportunity by creating, the whole idea of having another office.
Well,
but I mean, I think that's
the need is
amazing.
still here, right? Like, do
Yes.
we have equity? I mean, women still make 87 cents to the man's dollar. So there are individuals who can rise above barriers. But I don't, my focus is not the individual, it's the community collectively. And while there's still problems to be addressed and sort of issues out there, there's lots of work to be done.
Listen, I don't disagree. I think that more people should take the attitude that you've adopted in your life and say, I can make meaningful change. And I can't be afraid of, seeking new opportunities and new positions and breaking out of my comfort zone. And look at all of the good things that you've done.
And staying
and impactful things.
And building relationships.
Yes.
Because these wonderful opportunities that came my way, I mean, yes, you can work hard. You can work really hard and perhaps never have those great opportunities. But it's also about relationship building.
But I think that's also part of the fact that you created a lot of the opportunities by building relationships.
Yeah. So I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
I stayed in touch with my law school friends.
Right.
And, I let one know that I was looking for a job. Most people don't talk about that, right? Because they don't want their current employers to get wind of it, and they're nervous and they're worried. And so I was the same way. I wasn't telling people, that, hey, I was out there. But when she reached out, I was like, oh, yeah, and blah, blah, blah. And by sharing and by being open and honest, the good opportunity came my way. And when I mentor young people, I talk a lot because people think sometimes that by sending a LinkedIn, invite,
Yeah.
and having a Zoom coffee, that's relationship building. Now that's making contacts and connections, and it's reaching out, and that's important. But relationship building is something different from that.
The younger generation, of course, experiencing COVID, where, yes, keeping the Zooms and keeping the LinkedIns and the Messengers, because that's all they had at one point. I think that they also don't really have a clear path of how to create those relationships.
That's why they need mentors, to help them understand. When I speak on panels, one of the things I say is, once you have that coffee with that person, don't disappear.
Right.
Don't expect for them to reach out next. Put yourself out there a little bit and, reach out and say, hi, just wanted to say hello. How are you doing? I just blah, 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 wrote a paper on such and such, and send the paper, whatever it is. But keep a connection. Don't disappear.
Do you have connections with some of the people that you've mentored where you've looked at them and say, oh my goodness, look at this.
I mean, they're like all my friends.
Yes, yeah, okay.
Because
because you invest in the relationship.
You form lifelong,
Yes.
connections. I did a program when I was at Sherman and Sterling called Student Sponsor Partnership. And you help to pay the tuition for a student to attend Catholic high school. Now, why was it Catholic high school? Because it was a little less expensive than other private schools, so a little bit more affordable for the people that they were targeting to be mentors in this program. What drew me to it was that it wasn't the typical program where it's the best of the best and the brightest. There are lots of programs for them. I'm not saying that they aren't necessary. But this was a program that actually sort of targeted students whom their guidance counselors or deans thought could excel if given the right direction. They weren't necessarily the top of their class. They might have been the middle, but they saw a kernel of something there if it could be nurtured. And that's what drew me to that program, because it's catching the kids
that
really don't
nice.
Always get the attention.
Yes.
And I guess, so I got together with my mentee like twice a month. The program was great because they helped create events for us to get together, so that the pressure wasn't on to always have to schedule or think about what to do.
Right.
And I guess I talked about my college a lot. I didn't realize it, but I must, because she ended up going to Williams College.
Really?
Yes, and now she has a PhD in education, and she works on developing policy in the New York City educational system. And
oh my goodness.
We get together as often as we can.
And how proud do you feel over that?
She's like my daughter.
Right? It's
I
oh my
refer
goodness.
to her as my daughter.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful.
But I recently did a program with UAU, and I can't remember what the name of the program was. United Activities Unlimited. We shouldn't always do the acronyms. But I did this program with UAU where I was paired with a couple of students. And these were students that had a lot of challenges, having lost their parents and things like that. And dealing with a lot of really deep, difficult things. And my mentee in this program had lost his parents, was living in temporary situation, needed to find an apartment. And I just felt so bad for him because he was so smart and hardworking.
And young.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, don't, because it's infectious. I'll start to cry too. Contagious, everything. I'll be like, ah.
But, I was like, what can I do to help him? And so I asked him how his apartment search was going. And he wasn't like getting places because he didn't have the credit history because he's so young.
Right.
And he didn't have this and he didn't have that. So I reached out to someone at UAU and I said, what do you think I could do to help? and they said letters from elected officials attesting to his character could really help a lot. So I reached out to another elected official, and he and I did letters that we sent to him, and he's now in an apartment.
Really? Oh my goodness. You just, I don't know. It's just really sad. It's sad that they're in that position to begin with, and it's sad that there aren't more people who are willing to go that extra mile, make that extra phone call, find out, to be able to help. Because you'll lose a child like that.
Yes.
A child like that will be lost if someone
Yes.
doesn't take the opportunity to turn around and try to guide them, and also not just talk, but do the walk. You have to do the walk along with the talk. Yeah. Otherwise, he would not be in the house.
So,
you know?
so anyway, so I'm sorry to get so
No,
emotional.
that's the beauty of you, Winnie. Come on now. Oh my goodness, I don't know where to even go with this. The mentoring program, it seems like it never ends for you, though. You're always mentoring and being involved in doing so many things. Do you ever have any downtime? Ever? Like,
I'm working really hard to structure my schedule so that I have more downtime. Like last year, for the first time in maybe a decade, and it wasn't last year, it was actually this past February, I took a vacation.
wow,
Mickey and I went to Cartagena.
beautiful.
Yeah, and it was only for 7 or 8 days. I think 7 days, 6 nights. So we're going again next February.
So this is why you won't take the time to go away with Jacqueline and I. Okay, now I get it. Now I get it. Because you don't actually go away. You're always busy. Okay, I get it. I won't take it personally. It's okay. So maybe we have to do something a little closer and only overnight with like a group of women so it could cover the,
No, but I want to do more things where I get away and get away and not be working. Because usually when I'm traveling, it's connected with something that I do, a board that I'm on, the State Bar Association. So there's a little downtime, but I'm mostly working. And every other year I do like a family reunion, and I go home for the holidays. But I really am trying to do more things where I get away, and it's not because of something I belong to or I
Right.
need to be
We
there.
could just shut that all off.
Or I feel like,
Yeah.
obligated to be there, where I'm not working and where, I have the real downtime. So I am trying to, do more of that as well.
Listen, I am about to, I was given the good news that I could retire at the end of this month.
Wow.
But I am not. I'm going to wait till the end of the school year because the New York City Department of Ed is really short on staff. And I can't leave in the middle of the year. I just can't.
And I know
really
you
towards
work
the
with a
beginning
lot
of
of
the year.
students,
I
right?
do,
And
I do.
there are connections that you make and that would be hard to break off mid-year, I would imagine.
I think that it would be the wrong decision. Listen, God forbid, if I was ill or something like that, that would be different. Or if there was somebody ill in my family where I needed to attend to, but we're not in that position. The children that I work with, there's one particular family, and when they had a baby, I kept saying I wanted to kind of leave the Department of Ed because I had just become vested at that time for my health care, and that was, a big thing for me. And they were like, no, you can't, not until the baby graduates 5th grade. So now the baby is in 5th grade, and she's graduating in June. So the joke has always been with her parents, that I always watched their children. I said, I have 2 daughters, which I have 765 kids that I see, Monday through Friday, barring a holiday, that are all my kids. I don't just watch your kids. I watch everybody else's kid, and I treat them all like, they're my own, which sometimes is not always what the kid wants because they want that anonymity, or to, trial and error, make a mistake without me catching them. And I've developed such a relationship with the community that when the kids come in, I'm like, I know your grandma. I know your aunt. I had your cousin. And I'm rattling off family names. And the kids just look at me. I said, so that means I have your mom's number, right? So so if there's a problem, I can always help you before I have to call your mom.
And grandma and the aunt, they're all going to
Exactly, exactly. And they look at me, so they're like, I can't even, and I'm like, no, you can't. No, you cannot,
That's the village we should always have.
Yes.
The village and community of support.
Well, everybody was really good to my children when they went to school. And I mean, with my older daughter, Brooklyn, where I'm from Bay Ridge, and academically, the school that she was attending didn't really suit her needs anymore. When she was coming home and telling me that she was bored and she wasn't getting enough in 2 different concentrations, and that she was a little fearful that what was somebody else learning that I may not be learning. And it was a very safe environment that she went to. It was a safe environment because she went to a private school, and the public schools were a little rough. They were very rough when I was young. So sending her to my elementary school, which was across the street, was a safe bet. Everybody knew me. It was one of those safety things. And then I realized she's really not getting the academic experience that she needs. And between that and my husband is from Staten Island, that's what made us move here. And it was for Petrides. When Petrides switched over from the College of Staten Island to a New York City public school, and it became a seamless experience, because I still don't like elementary leave. As soon as you get your foundation and you feel like what this is all about.
Taken out and put into
and then you got to start all over again. And then junior high, you got to start all over again in high school. I like a seamless experience, or at least, the pre-Ks through 8, because I think it keeps the 8th graders a little bit more humble when they're around young children. They can't act as self-absorbed and obnoxious as they can become left to their own, just 8th grader experience. And not that they continue to be self-absorbed or obnoxious. It's just that age group, where you test the waters and you say things that maybe, you're looking for a rise and to see if the eyebrow goes up. And I have no work done except for my Botox, which, I don't cheat on my Botox or my husband, but I make sure that my Botox never interferes with the raised eyebrow look, because the kids in school know once that eyebrow goes up, they're like, oh, geez, Miss G. Oh, we can't do anything bad. And I think 8th graders need that Mrs. G eyebrow, and
it's just interesting
grandma's number in my phone.
It's also interesting to me that you said that you can actually sort of target in that way. I didn't realize that.
Yes. Yeah, so my eyebrow can still go up. But I think that, that whole commitment, although it was never my calling or even a thought to ever join the Department of Ed, I'm retired from News Corp. I've had several different careers in my life. I never, ever thought about it. But now that I'm there, I have a commitment. And I can't break that commitment in the beginning of the year. Although I would really love to sleep past 5 o'clock in the morning. I just, and I really don't want to drive during a snowstorm.
Congratulations, though, on
Thank you.
On the upcoming retirement. And
Listen, I have to reinvent myself and figure out what I want to be when I grow up, when I retire in June, because
or just never grow up.
I am Peter Pan to the max. I will do something else. I can't sit home. I'm Peter Pan. I'm never growing old. This is one of my heroes, Iris.
Oh,
and I got the pleasure to meet her.
her.
And I want to be Iris. I want to wear cool, funky clothes. And I just want to have a ball and do what I want to do until I'm really old, and when I just go to sleep with a smile on my face, and that's it. But I can't retire, so I will just wait till June, find a new path, and I know I'm going to get involved with more not-for-profits, and I definitely am going to support your Dignity project, the Dignity Foundation.
The Foundation for Dignity.
Foundation for Dignity, I apologize. And we're going to do all these remarkable things, and I'm going to just know you forever because I adore you and respect you.
Oh, and likewise.
Thank you so much for being with me today.
So great spending time with you today.
Thank you. I appreciate
more
it.
More importantly, thank you for being such a wonderful friend.
Oh my gosh, please, you're a blessing in my life. Thank you so much.